The Pokemon Company International sent me a Scarlet and Violet 151 Elite Trainer box, and I had the perfect idea. Only the first 151 Pokemon show up in this set, so let's do a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon FireRed, only using the Pokemon pulled. If I win, I'll give every card away pulled in this video. But if I lose, I'll add 3 sealed 151 Elite Trainer boxes on top of everything pulled. And to give it even more stakes, to complete the Nuzlocke, I must defeat Round 2 of the Elite Four and Champion, as well as all 4 modes of the Trainer Tower on Sevy Islands. Will I be able to do it? Well, let's see if I can get a good view with the pulls. So, with an Elite Trainer box of the 151 set, we get 9 packs of cards as well as a promo Snorlax, so that's already a great guaranteed Pokemon to add to the pool. I'm not too worried about the pre-evolutions of Pokemon except for early game, but the fully evolved Pokemon are super important to ensuring I have enough encounters to get through the 8 leaders, both rounds of the league, and the Sevy Islands. Now to keep things organized, I'm just going to show you the pack opening and just talk about how this run is going to work. While I may pull multiple copies of a certain Pokemon, I'm still playing with Species Clause, so it only matters if I pull a single copy of each Pokemon. Trainers also do nothing for me, which is unfortunate since I do casually enjoy the TCG, so they are technically useful in the game, but the purpose of this challenge, it just doesn't have a use for them. Another thing to consider is that if I miss a middle stage of a Pokemon's evolution line, for instance if I get Oddish and Vileplume but don't get Gloom, I can still evolve Oddish into Gloom, but I won't be able to use that Gloom in battle until it evolves into Vileplume. This applies for Switch training too, so it's either EXP share, rare candy to bypass a middle evolution, or bust. Also, no legendaries for an additional layer of challenge. I'm trying my best to pack on everything that I can possibly think of to prevent me from winning. And I think that on top of how much further beyond I have to go to finish this game this time around, should maybe do it? Especially when I pull a Mew EX. Any other EX aside from the starters would have been appreciated, as I managed to pull a full art Blastoise in this ETB, so I suppose that does give us our only logical choice of starter. Speaking of EXs though, I would like to point out the other Psychic type EX in this set, Alakazam. While I didn't pull it, as a resident Pokemon TCG player, I've got to give them props for exploring new game design space with this card, allowing for it to use the Dimensional Hand attack even if it's on the bench, giving it an added layer of protection, especially when something like Dark Terra Charizard EX is quite a popular meta pick for tournaments currently and can hit that Alakazam for weakness. Anyway, once we're done opening all 9 packs, I'm given a pool of exactly 80 Pokemon to work with out of the 151 available, with a lot of them being missing pieces of evolution lines or Pokemon that are only obtainable in one area and sharing it with others, primarily the Safari Zone, with one unobtainable exception in Mew. But with that, 80 Pokemon stand between me, this game, and all of the post-game challenges that lie within it. Will I be able to do it? Well, let's find out after I give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Super Snail. Ever wanted to travel as an animal to save the world? Well, I'm here to tell you about a game that lets you do just that, Super Snail. In Super Snail, you travel across the land to save the world from evil gods and their minions. There are 8 whole worlds to explore, all customized to reward you for exploring every nook and cranny they have to offer. It's a really funny story too, with tons of good internet humor to keep you invested along the way, almost like a playable comic strip. Moreover, much like Pokemon, your snail can evolve, granting you more power and higher stats as well as more nifty designs. So you'll likely feel right at home if you're familiar with what you see on this channel. There's also tons of special events to grant you more rewards or even keep you on your toes, so you'll really want to keep your eyes peeled. And with over 400 real-world artifacts to find, there's plenty to keep you occupied as you try to collect them all. My favorite feature of this game is probably how it allows you to click a button and you see your small snail blitz across the land with all the goodies you picked up along the way. It's pretty satisfying. And you don't even need to sink money into the game as long as you're willing to invest the time and collect them all. Also note that near the end of October, there's a Halloween event which lets you collect free resources, snail shells, and tons of spooky items like jack-o'-lanterns. And if you're really feeling enchanted by this game, you can enter the gift code HALLOWEEN to redeem even more rewards. So don't delay, download Super Snail now before the code expires soon, and thank you to the devs of Super Snail for sponsoring the video. Let's get into the run. So, starting off with the normal beginning and getting to Oak's lab, I choose Squirtle as my starter. This is, of course, the only starter line where we got every piece of the puzzle, so it's the only obvious choice. Our rival's Bulbasaur puts up a pretty good fight in our first battle here, putting up a critical hit that almost does Squirtle in, but a crit tackle on the crackback puts us right back at parity, and since Squirtle outspeeds, we do just enough to KO on our last potential turn to win the fight. Now then, encounters before Brock. First up, Rattata on Route 1, which can't evolve into Raticate since we didn't pull one, but will stand to be a decent attacker for at least the first 2 or so gyms, maybe the first 3. Route 22 houses Mankey, a 45% encounter compared to Spearo's 10% and Rattata's 45%, so basically a 90% near guaranteed encounter here is much appreciated. Route 2 provides Weedle, which kinda stinks at this point considering we didn't pull a Kakuna, but we did pull a Beedrill, so we'll have to wait until Mount Moon to pick up our first rare candy, and delay Weedle's evolution until after Brock in order to consider using this. Then lastly, in Viridian Forest, we've got Caterpie. Thank goodness, by the way, since this encounter I actually pulled the entire line for, though it doesn't matter too much for Brock considering I have a water type and all. With all 5 of them captured though, it's time for some early EV training. I'm taking all 5 of them in training and speed, so to conserve as much EXP as possible, I decided to split each one 5 ways on level 2 Pidgey and Rattata on Route 1, which provide 15 EXP each, and therefore only 3 EXP to each Pokemon. This is a very tedious process that takes 252 of them, but that leaves plenty enough room for the 3 Pokemon I want to train in physical attack, those being Weedle, Rattata, and Mankey. Of course, doing these on level 3 Mankey on Route 22, so that they can split the EXP 3 ways, as those provide 30 and therefore 10 per Pokemon. Unfortunately though, there's no Pokemon that yield special attack EVs until we hit Abra on Route 24, so Squirtle and the newly evolved Metapod are gonna need to just train on more Pokemon that yield specifically speed, so they don't lose the opportunity to get those later on. All that aside, Brock is a simple endeavor with Squirtle's Water Gun, one-shotting both Geodude and Onix all while outspeeding both to give me the quick win. I'm highly expecting most of the base game to be a breeze considering my experience here, so what I'm really looking forward to is getting to those post-game battles and whether or not I have the ability to navigate those, especially the Trainer Tower since I've never beat that mode in any playthrough I've ever done of these games. Route 3 is up next and thankfully provides Jigglypuff as my encounter, which is the only area to obtain this in Kanto, and since I pulled it and a full art Wigglytuff, that makes me a pretty happy camper. Before heading further though, I figured I'd EV train it in speed, then hold it at level 12 so that I could Repel Trick while in the second basement floor of Mount Moon for another encounter in Clefairy. Now while I didn't pull a Clefairy in my opening, I did pull a Clefable, and since this is a simple stone evolution with a Moonstone, conveniently finding 2 of them here in Mount Moon, I'm good to evolve both of them when I hit Cerulean City. As well as Weedle into Kakuna and into Beedrill now that I've gotten the rare candy here, bypassing the need to use Kakuna in battle. Now the fossil here isn't really a decision as I go for the Dome fossil, seeing as I pulled both Kabuto and Kabutops, whereas for the Helix I only pulled Ammonite with no Amistar. Wish I had pulled Aerodactyl though, I would have 100% been going with that for my Cinnabar Island encounter if I did. Right outside is Route 4, evolving both Moonstone encounters before grabbing a Spearow, yet another Pokemon I can fully evolve as I managed to pull both Spearow and Fearow from my box. But it's not like I really need it at all, since Rattata is an absolute beast right now. Considering it also has an adamant nature, I'm not surprised it completely soloed my rival's 4 Pokemon team, as Hyper Fang nearly one-shots Pidgeotto using Quick Attack next turn to KO, leading to his own Rattata, which also goes down to Hyper Fang. Third out is Abra, and since it only knows Teleport, there's no reason to go for anything that's not Quick Attack, one-shotting again and leaving just Bulbasaur. Now, while this Pokemon does survive a Hyper Fang, all it does is get off a Poison Powder, leaving Rattata to clean up the KO with Quick Attack to finish the fight with over half HP remaining. Yeah, I can't complain about that at all. Now then, I have to do some finagling to maximize my encounters here in the next 4 areas. There's 4 Pokemon I want here, those being Pidgey, Oddish, Meowth, and Abra. Pidgey and Oddish are available on all 4 routes, whereas Meowth is only available on routes 5 and 6, and Abra on routes 24 and 25. I'm basically gonna have to go to the first of each to see which encounter I get in order to get all 4, which isn't difficult, it just requires a little planning, with Oddish on route 5, Pidgey on route 24, Abra on route 25, and Meowth on route 6, getting me all 4 of them. With these, I'm not allowed to use Pidgeotto, Vileplume, Persian, Abra, or Alakazam, but at least with the first three, I'm able to avoid that as I still have a single rare candy for bypassing Pidgeotto after we get past Erica's level cap, and I don't have to evolve Gloom or Meowth. But Abra, I'm gonna need a grand total of 5 rare candies to get it to level 16 and evolve it into Kadabra. Seeing as there's 10 of them scattered around Kanto, that shouldn't be too hard, though it will take a little while. But I'm not done yet, as there's still a few other encounters I'm free to go for before Misty, even if the level cap hasn't yet gone up. First is Magikarp in Vermilion City, as we can obtain the Old Rod here and fish for one, though Gyarados is not usable as we didn't pull one, we're just getting this for Dupe's Claws. Probably for the best considering we want difficulty in this challenge, by the way. There's technically 2 more I can also get right now, the first being in Diglett's Cave, but seeing as I only pulled Dugtrio and no Diglett, there's no point for me going in here until after Lieutenant Surge, as my level cap won't reflect those encounters until then. As for Route 11, there's both Ekans and Drowsy here that I don't have, but if I wait until I can use Cut outside of battle, I can get Ekans on Route 9 and guarantee Drowsy on Route 11 instead, although I can't use Arbok, so Ekans has very limited usage, and I didn't pull Drowsy, so really we're only grabbing it for the Pokédex and to evolve later with the EXP share. Now then, with all of the technical baggage out of the way, let's finally challenge Misty. She leads off with Staryu, and I've got Butterfree with Confusion, hitting for just under half as she uses Harden, bringing her down into the red as Recover spam begins. I'm doing just enough damage to keep her in Recover mode, basically just fiending for her to either shift into Water Pulse or to get confused and hit herself, with the former happening and doing minimal damage before Staryu goes down. All that remains is Starmie, so I hit Sleep Powder after a Water Pulse does a little under half of Butterfree's remaining HP, giving me a free swap into Beedrill for turn 1 of Sleep. Then turn 2 of Sleep allows for a Twin Needle to nearly KO. Misty then goes for a Super Potion, sealing Starmie's fate as Beedrill has been outspeeding this entire time, using 2 Twin Needles in a row before Starmie ever gets the chance to wake up, KOing and winning me the fight. Honestly, I did not expect the early game bugs to be the perfect tandem here, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Now then, time to get that HM for Cut, and another rival fight stands in my way before I can proceed. He leads Pidgeotto, so I go with Wigglytuff and just start laying into him with Pound, using it 4 times all while taking a myriad of quick attacks and Gust, though he does get held down by Cute Charm for a turn, giving me a bit more HP to work with for Raticate, who's held down for 2 turns following a quick attack for me to KO in 3 pounds. Now that we still have over half HP going into Kadabra, I figured I'd just stay in and see what he goes for, and sure enough, it's Disable for my only physical stab attacking move. So I swap into Butterfree, take a Confusion, and start tackling for around a quarter each. This occurs twice, all while Kadabra uses Kinesis and a Confusion for some decent damage, so I finally swap out into Wartortle and deliver a bite for the last half HP needed to KO, leaving just Ivysaur. Not exactly the Pokemon I want to be in against, so I just swap for Beedrill, taking a Sleep Powder and Leech Seed before just sitting there and taking a few very weak Vine Whips before Twin Needle finally lands to nearly KO, though Sleep Powder prevents me from winning after landing 2 of them. Unfortunately, this actually occurs twice, since I swapped to Wigglytuff and he does the same thing. So I decide, screw it, this is the last fight Rattata is useful in, so I may as well just swap and see if I can KO with Quick Attack. And sure enough, after surviving a Vine Whip with less than half HP, it manages to KO and win me the fight, giving me access to Cut and therefore Ekans on Route 9. Drowsy is again on Route 11, Route 10 has a guaranteed Voltorb in the grass, a perfect electric type, considering we both pulled it and Electrode, and Rock Tunnel has on its first basement floor with the Repel trick at level 17, Onyx. Not exactly the most useful thing in FireRed and Leaf Green, if Alpharad is anything to go by, but it's at least a decently bulky rock type that can fulfill something if needed, I guess. Anyway, Vermilion gym time, and would you believe it, it's easy. Mankey now has Dig and Brick Break from TMs, so Dig one-shots Voltorb after outspeeding, doing the same to Pikachu without triggering static, leaving just Raichu. Now Dig doesn't quite one-shot after outspeeding, though it once again doesn't trigger static and allows for Raichu to hit Thunder Wave, being negated by a held Cherry Berry. Now I, like an idiot, don't think he's gonna heal, so I go for Brick Break and barely miss the KO following the Super Potion, just now finally triggering static and giving Surge an opening to attack. But instead he wastes his turn with Double Team and Brick Break connects to KO. I mean, sure, I'll take it. I love when the AI is like, you know what, today I feel like dislocating my shoulder by throwing so hard that a 5-year-old would be looking at me in disgust. One rock tunnel later, and it's time for more encounters. First up, Route 8 houses Growlithe, my only fire type of the run. I can't evolve it since I didn't pull Arcanine, and even though I did pull both Eevee and Flareon, I really need something else in Celadon City. Admittedly though, I don't quite have the money necessary to get it yet, so I'm just challenging Erica first, with her leading Victory Bell as I go with my newly evolved Fearow that I pulled out of the box, holding to level 25 so that it would learn Aerial Ace by level up. And it's the perfect move for this fight, as it manages to both one-shot Victory Bell and Tangela, and nearly Vileplume on the first go, missing Stun Spore as she uses a Hyper Potion next turn, being beat out by the High Roll one-shot next turn to win the fight. Half down, half in 2 leagues, and a trainer tower to go. Yeah, that one doesn't roll off the tongue anymore, does it? Now with the level cap increasing by a pretty massive amount, there's going to be a lot of encounters for me to get with very few important battles in between. So let's just briefly touch on all of that before we get into the latter half of the gym leaders, since they usually go in pretty quick succession. Giovanni 1 inside of the Game Corner hideout is pretty simple with Wigglytuff, using the Water Pulse TM to KO both Onix and Rhyhorn without taking too much damage, leaving just Kangaskhan. From here I figured I could just swap into Primeape and KO with Brick Break, but seeing a Mega Punch on the swap in definitely makes that impossible without risking a KO if that doesn't quite do the trick. So instead I swap for Growlithe to lower its attack and... oh. I'm only just now noticing that this doesn't have Intimidate. Probably should have brought Ekans even though it's useless. That's fine, it takes a pointless bite as I pivot back over into Wigglytuff and take a Tail Whip and Bite before starting to go for Pound, doing pretty minimal damage. After one Mega Punch and a second Pound though, I'm definitely unable to stick around without risking a KO from Mega Punch, so out comes Beedrill in hopes we can continue to whittle this girl down. Thankfully, she doesn't go for much important, only using 2 Tail Whips and a special Bite for 10 damage as I get off 2 Twin Needles, though that -2 defense makes me certain that Mega Punch will KO from this position. That means out to Fearow, taking a Bite, then firing off an Aerial Ace to finally push for that last quarter of HP in order to KO and win the fight. Awesome! While that was a little more difficult than anticipated, now I've got the freedom to head on into Pokemon Tower for my next rival fight, a very simple endeavor thanks to Primeape. Rock Slide KOs Pidgeotto after outspeeding in one shot, thank you Rock Tunnel move tutor by the way, leading to Kadabra second, who also goes down to Rock Slide because its defense is literally more brittle than paper. Third is Gyarados, and despite Intimidate, Rock Slide does over half, flinches, and KOs with the second to put 3 Pokemon down in a row damageless, bringing out Growlithe fourth. Now Intimidate number 2 might seem like I should swap, and I should, but Rock Slide still KOs from this point, so I'm being stubborn and staying in, leaving just Ivysaur. I go for Mega Kick since it's the only move that Ivysaur doesn't resist from Primeape, missing, all while he wastes a turn with Sleep Powder due to the ability Vital Spirit, preventing Primeape from falling asleep. And sure, Poison Powder lands next turn, but so does Mega Kick for half damage, leaving the third attempt at Mega Kick plenty enough to KO after a Razor Leaf does less than half, winning me the fight single-handedly. Or should I say single-footedly. I'd imagine that stomping the ground a whole bunch of times probably is what caused those Rock Slides. Anyway, now that we can finally start getting some encounters with Team Rocket out of here, we can first go to Route 16 to grab Snorlax, picking up without much of a struggle thanks to Sleep and Infatuation, then grabbing Doduo on Route 17. Can't evolve it unfortunately, but it's here for the Pokedex count nonetheless. After all, we do need 60 Pokemon captured in order to get into the postgame anyway, so I may as well. Route 18 I'm holding off since there's an in-game trade for Lickitung that I can't access yet, so it's back to Celadon City we go now that I've got plenty of cash laying around, picking up 5,500 coins to purchase Scyther. This thing is a crazy good sweeper with Swords Dance and Agility access, and practically is the only Pokemon in the game that can do this effectively that's part of my pool, other than Kadabra eventually, but I don't really think that's going to be able to do much because it doesn't get Agility. Having both Swords Dance and Agility means we just can go ham against anything that isn't Blue's Arcanine with Extreme Speed. With that in hand, back to Diglett's Cave we go to Repel Trick for Dugtrio, capturing it quickly with Snorlax. Back up top to Pokemon Tower next, on the same floor as the Ghost Marowak, houses Haunter with the Repel Trick, seeing as I didn't pull Ghastly nor Gengar, but did pull Cubone but not Marowak, so it made sense to just avoid Cubone altogether and do it this way. Over in Saffron City, after getting the T, has the Fighting Dojo, an easily beatable area with Fearow in order to get Hitmonlee, and while I did pull Hitmonchan, I figure Special Punches are not going to be very handy. You know, we're in Gen 3 and Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, and Ice Punch are special, so may as well just avoid them. Fuchsia City has a spot of water that I can fish in with the good rod obtainable here to get Poliwag, and while I only pulled Poliwhirl and Poliwrath, we are close to getting the EXP share with 50 Pokemon, so I'll be able to evolve it sooner rather than later. Route 15 has Venonat, 14 has Ditto, then after clearing out mountains of trainers in routes and in Silphco, I finally got enough rare candies to evolve Abra into Kadabra, giving me another usable encounter. It's definitely cool seeing the box get as full as it is with such useful encounters, and heck, we can actually go back and get some usable items too, considering we've passed the 40 Pokemon threshold needed to obtain the item finder, allowing me to go back to both Snorlax spots and grab 2 sets of leftovers. While Protect is a one-time only TM over in the power plant, being able to effectively make that setup sweeper even better because it can heal up, well, that might actually be enough to make me want to give it to Kadabra, because it gets Calm Mind as well, a TM that we'll be getting from Sabrina. So we might be able to afford 2 sweepers, one of each type of attacking, so I might be pretty set here. Oh yeah, and I can also grab some of the other stuff with the amount of money pouring in from that, like the held items with the Mystic Water, Miracle Seed, and Charcoal from the Game Corner, as well as TMs both from here and the Celadon department store to finally start optimizing my movesets, and just in time for Rival 5 and Giovanni 2. The first starts with Pidgeot as I go with Scyther, immediately setting up Swords Dance and then seeing Feather Dance. Well, at least we're at parity. One Swords Dance will be enough for me to KO with Aerial Ace, so I go for it again, and after taking slightly under half from Wing Attack following Leftovers recovery, it KOs, leading to Growlithe. Alright, well, it's still a Growlithe, so I'm fine to set up another Swords Dance after Intimidate, getting to +3 and taking only around a third from Flame Wheel, thankfully dodging the burn as Aerial Ace once again KOs. Third out is Gyarados, and yep, he's actually targeting this attack stat because Intimidate number 2 comes through, but no matter as this Gyarados has a booty moveset, so 2 slashes through a very light bite is enough to seal the deal on the third KO. Alakazam is 4th, and since we outspeed, Slash is more than enough to KO through Paper, and with Venusaur out 5th being weak to flying, +2 stab Aerial Ace is easily enough, single-handedly giving me another win. As well as a Lapras from the Silphco for my encounter. Doesn't get really much better than that. Giovanni 2 also goes pretty swimmingly thanks to Kadabra, leading off against Nidorino with Psychic to KO in one shot. Nidoqueen's second and barely doesn't go down, but Double Kick does less than half, so who cares? Down it goes to a second Psychic as Kangaskhan comes out third. Now Snorlax, after swapping out, is a brick wall in comparison, and when paired with super effective Brick Break is more than enough to 2-shot it without much danger, especially while holding leftovers, then doing the same thing to his 4th and final Pokemon in Rhyhorn to 2-shot and win the fight. Dope, and with that, it's just trainer cleanup and grinding to the level cap, heading towards Koga first with my advantage against poison types, since I'm going to go in here 3 levels below the level cap so that I can hit some of the surf routes before I fight Sabrina. Kadabra one-shots everything with Psychic. No boosts, no quills, just a spoon and a vendetta. Now with access to Surf outside of battle, since I was literally 3 levels below the cap for Koga and Sabrina, and still more than confident that I was going to obliterate the former with Kadabra and if needed Dugtrio, I'm good to clear out the Surf routes, making Cinnabar Island flyable, while accidentally getting my Fearow killed in the face of trying to keep EXP equilibrium. Man, we were on such a good deathless run too. I was really hoping we'd at least be able to keep that up through the first round of the league, but hey, I can't really be too mad. If it wasn't gonna be remaining useful for that long, then really who cares, but I probably want as many encounters as I can get for something like a battle facility that's in the postgame. Anyway, Sabrina's next on the docket, and she starts with Kadabra. I start with Scyther, and it literally does not matter as the Swords Dance Agility combo makes sure I hit all 4 of her Pokemon with one-shot Aerial Aces, taking out Kadabra, Venomoth, Mr. Mime, and Alakazam in sequence to win, all while only taking half damage from a single future sight during that time. One Pokemon Mansion later with a Repel since I don't want to do the encounters again yet, and it's time for Blaine's Gym. Guess what? Blastoise solos. Surf Growlithe, gone. Surf Ponyta, donezo. Surf Rapidash, out of here. Surf Arcanine, oh wait, why are you still trying to attack me? Oh, I see. Missing with Takedown. Cute. Now get heal locked with Hyper Potions and fall to a few more Surfs, you fluffy dog. Well, that was easy, and by denying Bill to go to the Sevy Islands just yet, I can go ahead and start sorting out my useful and terrible encounters, all while collecting the rest needed for the EXP share and for the ones that I want, including Kabuto from Cinnabar Island by reviving it, getting the Super Rod on Route 12 and using it to fish up Psyduck, then doing the same on Route 13 for Krabby. With the amount of badges I have too, I can actually just fly on over to Viridian City, head up through Route 22 and into Route 23 to access the water with the good rod so that I can fish up Goldeen. Then, with all of these fishing encounters out of the way for Dupe's Claws, I can then guarantee encounter a Dratini from the Safari Zone, and since I'm too good, it only takes a single ball to capture it. Now, again, I only pulled Dragonair and Dragonite, so the EXP share will have to carry here, but we do have enough encounters to get to it. Remaining are Tentacool on Route 19 by surfing, Coughing from the Pokemon Mansion, Repel Tricking with a level 26 to get Pikachu from the Power Plant, which we can't use, but since we pulled Raichu, we can easily Thunderstone it to evolve and become usable. Then finally, we can grab the EXP share from the Fuchsia City Route 15 gate, and enter Giovanni's gym to start leveling up our unusable party members like Drowsy, Dratini, and Poliwag. And with all the trainers exhausted on the mainland, it's Sevy Islands time with only a single new encounter here in Geodude from Mount Ember. Can't evolve it, didn't pull Graveler, didn't pull Golem, so it's useless at this point. But it's here, and it's funny, it's because I decided to use the Master Ball on it. 2 Island also has no new encounters, leaving just 3 Island with one new one in the Berry Forest in Execute. Again, no evolution, otherwise I'd be popping off about this one, considering I don't have a single grass type that's fully evolved. But with Lostel returned, we're good to head back to the mainland, then get my encounter for the Seafoam Islands in Seal, another Pokemon I can thankfully fully evolve. Though, actually, come to think of it, I can go back to 2 Island and technically Repel Trick for Golduck at level 40, and while this is an encounter I can use, this is the trade fodder necessary for the in-game trade on Route 18 for Lickitung, a Pokemon I can use. It's not the most useful thing in the world, but again, I'd rather add more Pokemon to the usable roster, considering there's a lot of crap I need to take care of in the postgame. And anything to throw at a problem and solve it without throwing a high-quality Pokemon at it is basically all I can ask for. But with that and a grind to level 50, we're good to take on Giovanni with this revamped team full of water types purely despite his existence. But really, all I need is Blastoise, though, as Surf literally one-shots everything on his team, taking out Rhyhorn, Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and Rhyhorn number 2 all in a row to win. Well, so much for trying to show team diversity today. I suppose we'll just go back to the core squad here. Speaking of which, wow, is this team busted! Electrode, Blastoise, Kadabra, Snorlax, Dragonite, and Scyther. All at level 55 with the exception of Dragonite since Dragonair learns Outrage at level 56, so I delayed the evolution by a level, and I figured that might come up in handy for exactly the last rival fight here. Thunderbolt on Electrode takes out the lead Pidgeot after outspeeding, leading to Rhyhorn second, who, while having the type advantage, decides to go for Takedown while I swap into Blastoise, taking very minimal damage and KOing with Surf. Third up is Venusaur, so I swap to Dragonite because I quad resist and nearly KO with Ice Beam, taking a Sweet Scent and firing off Thunderbolt just to be a weenie, then do so in the face of his 4 Pokemon in Gyarados to one-shot. Fifth is Growlithe, and thankfully Intimidate does nothing here since I'm running a special set Dragonite. Outrage goes hard here, one-shotting and leaving just Alakazam to be 2-shot through a Psychic, thankfully not getting 2-turn fatigue from Outrage before getting the KO. And thankfully for me, that's the only fight I need to use that attack, as the TM for Dragon Claw is right at the front of Victory Road, only having 10 less power than Outrage this generation, with none of the drawbacks. Nothing much else to this area aside from my encounter in Zubat, which I can't evolve, so it's useless. Plus, if I could, I wouldn't even be able to get Crobat anyway. But with Victory Road finished, it's a quick grind to level 60, edging my Pokemon up to the level cap and going in with Dragonite, Snorlax, Kadabra, Electrode, Blastoise, and Scyther. Not gonna lie, I could see myself using this if I was just playing casually, but this team looks hella diverse and really dope, so I think we're gonna have a pretty good time getting through the league here. I even went out of my way to teach Thief for an additional coverage special move on Electrode, getting several held items in the process for type boosting. Speaking of which, the Magnet will certainly help for Lorelei as I lead with Electrode, using Thunderbolt on her lead Dugong to KO in one shot, then doing the same to Cloyster, then Slowbro, only for Lapras to barely survive and hit a Surf for around a third. Honestly, I expected the Citrus Berry to get her out of healing range, but surprisingly enough, she still used a full restore, heal-locking her and eventually letting me KO with a Thief and Thunderbolt combo, leaving just Jinx to come out last, and get 2-shot with Thunderbolt after missing a Lovely Kiss. If that did hit, I was just planning on sending in Snorlax and clicking the attack button until it died with how much HP it has, but this'll do. Speaking of doing, Bruno is doing the whole being destroyed thing as Kadabra just one-shots all 5 of his Pokemon with Psychic, taking out Onix, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, Onix number 2, and Machamp to win. Speaking of one-shotting, Kadabra just did the same goddamn thing to Agatha. If this was an Alakazam, I feel like I'd be doing this to Dragonite on Lance's team and just doing it for the entirety of it. Because it's not, I'm not gonna risk it. Thankfully, though, I have a Dragonite, which outs his entire team. Gyarados is the lead, falling to a single Thunderbolt, as Dragonair comes out second, going down to Dragonclaw. Second verse, same as the first, as his fourth Pokemon, Dragonite, comes out and falls to Ice Beam. Then lastly, Aerodactyl comes out and finally outspeeds to hit something, this being Ancient Power, but it does less than half, and allows for Dragonite to KO in one shot with Thunderbolt. Did we expect anything different? I sure didn't, though I think my rival should pose at least somewhat of a threat. But we'll have to see as he leads Pidgeot against my Electrode, immediately destroying it with a one-shot Thunderbolt and leading to Rhydon. Well, it's out to Blastoise to take an Earthquake for half damage, outspeeding next turn and reciprocating with a Surf to KO, leading to Venusaur. Alright, it's game over for Mr. Gary here now that Venusaur is out, because it only has a Grass-type attack, namely Solar Beam, which just will not do any damage to a Pokemon that quad resists the attack, like, say, Scyther. So I'm free to swap, set up 3 Sword Stances and an Agility, then absolutely blast the rest of his team. Aerial Ace for Venusaur, Arcanine after Intimidate, Alakazam, and finally Gyarados despite Intimidate pulling Scyther to just +4. It's just too much for him to stand up against, giving me my first of 3 goals required to finish this challenge. So what do we do now? Well, we've got to finish up the Sevy Islands quest to get access to the Elite Four Round 2. And thankfully, since we've already collected 60 Pokemon before beating the League for the first time, I'm good to immediately receive the National Dex, then head back to the Sevy Islands to take on the last vestiges of Team Rocket, obtaining the Ruby on 1 island, fighting the Grunts on 4 island alongside Lorelei, attempting to nab the Sapphire on 6 island, only for it to be stolen by a dweeb that I could totally squish with Snorlax no problem, finally ending on 5 island in order to infiltrate Team Rocket's hideout on 5 Isle Meadow. I would talk about the admins, but they literally do nothing. They are so easy. Let's go to Elite Four Round 2? They do go up to a whopping cap of level 72, but to add to a little bit of the challenge, because I feel like if I don't, this might be an easy victory, I'm gonna do this with no overlapping team members from round 1. So I swap my team out and add in Raichu, Pidgeot, Lapras, Haunter, Tentacruel, and Dugtrio. Aside from some shared typings between Lapras and Haunter with Tentacruel, I think this team is very solid and can certainly rip through the additional Johto Pokemon added to this game's League rematches. So let's go for it, as Lorelei once again starts with Dugong as I go for Raichu, basically doing the same thing I did with Electrode in round 1, but I actually have options. Thunderbolt one-shots as second is Piloswine, though I don't trust the 75% accurate Iron Tail, so I swap into Pidgeot expecting Earthquake, then Feather Dance for the attack lowering due to its Rock-type option, though I suppose I should have expected Blizzard and just swapped for my Lapras. Thankfully it misses, so I go unpunished and then swap to Lapras next turn, taking a Blizzard for literally nothing as Surf KOs in one shot, leading to her own Lapras. Hilariously, the game eats my input down to Thunderbolt and then does no damage because I accidentally click Surf, because of Water Absorb, and she goes for Thunder, missing. That turn was a disaster, so at least we're at parity. Thunderbolt hits next turn for half as Thunder misses a second time, hitting a third 30% chance to miss in this battle alone and letting me go unpunished again to KO with a second Thunderbolt, leading to Cloyster, who also falls to a single Thunderbolt, leaving just Jinx. Now this should be easy enough, just Confuse Ray then swap into Raichu, but of course Jinx snaps out the turn I swap, hitting Psychic. It does less than half, so I'm completely fine. Just click Iron Tail and hope for the hit, and sure enough, even though it's 75% accurate, I get it to KO and win the fight. Well then, that was terrible execution. Let's tighten that up with Bruno. Then again, it's Bruno. I could probably play worse by tenfold and still win Deathless. First up is Steelix, so I lead Lapras to destroy it with Surf, leading to Hitmonchan second. From here, it's yet again a Confuse Ray into Stealth Hit, then swap into Haunter for Psychic to KO as Steelix number 2 comes in. Back into Lapras I go, taking a Dragon Breath for literally 0 damage after Leftovers, then hitting a Surf for the KO, leading to Hitmonlee fourth. Now this guy has 2 attacks which are super effective here, and the other being Fighting, so I do not want to swap Haunter in on a 50% chance to go down. So instead I just go for Surf, and my bets were correct, taking a Rock Slide for around 75% before outspeeding next turn with a second to KO, leaving just Machamp. Now, Machamp also has a Rock move, but he has 2 Fighting moves and a Ground move, all of which, you know, Haunter is immune to, and considering Lapras is at this low of HP, it's likely seeing a random move here, so I'll take the 75% chance of swapping into an immunity, plus the 10% chance of Rock Slide missing. I do so, seeing Brick Break do nothing, and retaliating with an unneeded critical hit Psychic to KO and win the fight. 2 down, 3 to go as Agatha's up next, leading Gengar as I lead Haunter, outspeeding and hitting Psychic for the one-shot. Out comes Misdreavus second, and I don't trust Physical Shadow Ball to do a thing here, so I swap into Lapras to tank it, then into Dugtrio to be immune to Thunderbolt. From here, I can finally pivot out into Pidgeot, and since he's male, he's immune to the potential Attract, as well as immune to Shadow Ball due to being part Normal type. Then, of course, he won't go for Thunderbolt on a Ground type, so this swap makes perfect sense. And sure enough, it's Attract, letting me go for Fly next turn and land the turn after that for a critical one-shot. The rest of her team should be a piece of cake from here, as I swap into Raichu on Gengar's Thunderbolt, then take a Sludge Bomb for around half as a Thunderbolt KOs, leading to Arbok 4th. Now, Arbok has literally no moves that can hit for any better than not very effective damage on Haunter, so I swap back in and dish out a Psychic, KOing and leaving just Crobat. Now from here, I'm expecting an outspeed here, so I swap into my most physically capable Pokemon in Lapras, taking a Shadow Ball for very minimal damage, then nailing Ice Beam on the Crackback despite being hit with Confused Ray for the one-shot KO, winning me the 3rd of 5 fights. Now Lance should be easy enough, considering we have Raichu for Gyarados, one-shotting with Thunderbolt, then Lapras for everything else. Though with Aerodactyl out second, I do consider staying in and just nailing it with Thunderbolt, but I reconsider as it has Earthquake, and I do not trust my ability to one-shot this thing. So I swap into Pidgeot for the immunity, then outspeed with Feather Dance before it can go for Ancient Power. It still does do some decent damage, but a second Feather Dance should be enough to inhibit him from hurting Lapras too much, until I walk into a critical hit. Well, that basically destroys the rest of my plan for the fight, KOing Aerodactyl with a single Surf, as well as both Dragonites by outspeeding and hitting Ice Beam, leaving just Kingdra. I actually taunt Tentacruel, specifically Giga Drain, for this to keep my HP as high as possible in the face of Dragon Dance, which seems to go well as I go for Ice Beam the turn after since we're so close to full HP, but with 2 Dragon Dances and only half HP gone, I'm a bit worried now. One last Giga Drain does enough to bring Kingdra low, but not low enough to trigger a full restore, leading to a Hyper Beam that one-shots Tentacruel from full, giving me my 2nd death of the run as Raichu comes in, takes advantage of the recharge turn, and finishes the fight with Thunderbolt to win. Well then, at least it was the needless Pokemon of the team that went down here since it overlapped types. Though again, I do want to retain as much as humanly possible for the Trainer Tower, and it also stinks to lose out on the Giga Drain TM since that move was the only good Grass-type move I had. That aside though, let's see if I can't get away with taking out the champion once again without losing anybody. I'm stealing his lead Pidgeot here, considering he swapped his lead out for Heracross. Immediately going for Flies, he goes for Rock Tomb, missing, and being one-shot next turn with the Quad Weakness as my favorite Pokemon of all time, Tyranitar, enters second. Fully expecting Thunderbolt here, I swap for Dugtrio, both for the immunity and to not take chip damage from the Sandstream setup Sandstorm, using Earthquake next turn for around 75% as Earthquake from Tyranitar does slightly more, bringing Dugtrio into the red as a second Earthquake from me KOs it, bringing in Venusaur third. I'm kind of hoping either he's dumb and goes for Earthquake for the KO, or Sunny Day to override the Sandstorm since now it's damaging his own Pokemon, but I don't get either, as I swap Pidgeot in on a Sludge Bomb that does just a hair under half with Sandstorm damage, then does the same thing as I go for Fly on the Sunny Day turn, hitting as Sludge Bomb brings Pidgeot down to just 10 HP. Thankfully, it doesn't poison though, so I'm able to hit it with Return for the KO, doing the same to Alakazam out next to take advantage of the pitiful defense and outspeeding, leading to Gyarados 5th. Now, thankfully, I'm in on a flying type, so Gyarados is 100% not going for Earthquake here, and probably not Dragon Dance either since it sees the KO. So I swap into Raichu and just utterly tank a Sun-reduced Hydro Pump before outspeeding next turn with Thunderbolt to KO, leaving just Arcanine. And with the Sun gone just as he enters, it's an easy swap into Lapras to take every move in his arsenal. First giving myself a layer of protection with Confuse Ray as he hits himself on that same turn, then hitting Surf next turn to barely miss the KO from a range, all while getting hit with Overheat for around half damage. All good though, as this just heal locks him, or forces him into extreme speed on his last turn, which cannot and will not KO Lapras regardless of Leftovers recovery here. Though it doesn't even matter, as Surf gets a likely maximum roll here to KO from full left to the full restore, winning me the fight and my second title reign. Now excuse me as I become Ric Flair real quick since I'm about to beat that 16-time record so I can grind a level 100 for the Trainer Tower. Yeah, that's right, baby! Limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a gun, woo! Now for this area, I've got every encounter that I can potentially be useful on standby with as good of moves as I can possibly give them. There's 4 modes to get through, those being singles, doubles, knockout, and mixed, with singles and doubles both having 8 fights apiece with 2 Pokemon on each team, knockouts having 24 fights with 1 Pokemon on each team, but no healing in between fights of 3, and mixed mode consists of 3 single battles, 3 double battles, and 2 knockout 3 trainer gauntlets for a total of 12 battles. That's 52 fights in total to get through here, and I've already suffered 2 deaths this run. So let's see if we can make that final push. Single starts off really wonky as while Dragonite takes out Feraligatr, Snorlax goes down to exactly 1 HP against Kangaskhan before managing to pull through with a super effective Brick Break to KO and close it out. Second battle is easy as Beedrill and Yanma both fall to Dragonite. Third is fine as well, Kadabra Psychic Wheezing, and Execute while paralyzing Dragonite is still easily defeated by Ice Beam. Fourth trainer has Primeape and Slowbro, easily done with Kadabra thanks to Psychic and Shockwave, though the latter does do major damage with Flamethrower, so I swap into Dragonite to KO with Thunderbolt without too much danger. Fifth has Nidoking, and Psychic takes care of that from Kadabra, and Tauros, which Snorlax actually can't take care of despite the bulk and super effective Brick Break, forcing me into Lapras to barely survive Body Slam on 12 HP to deliver 2 Surfs for the KO. Sixth up, Dunsparce, so I just throw Kadabra at it since it's practically harmless, using Psychic for well over half before Earthquake gets a one-shot. Well, I guess that's what I get for calling this thing's defenses worse than paper. Dragonite cleans up, KOing it and Politoed with Thunderbolt, but that's a hard loss so early on. Seventh battle is against a shiny Meowth, cool, and Chansey, not so cool, both taken out by Snorlax's Brick Break, and last but not least is a Togepi and Snorlax trainer, so Scyther's easily able to just withstand the Togepi and set up 3 Swords Dances, KOing both with Aerial Ace while only taking around half damage. Singles battles are complete, so we're moving right ahead into doubles, replacing Kadabra with Haunter. First up is a shiny Espeon and Jolteon, so I send in Dugtrio and Dragonite for the Earthquake KO on Jolteon, and the Dragon Claw for Espeon to finish it off in 1 turn. Second up, Alakazam and Houndoom, which I think should be easy enough with Surf from Lapras and Shadow Ball with Haunter, but Houndoom outspeeds Haunter and hits it with Flamethrower to bring it into the red, all while Shadow Ball barely does under half to Alakazam, leaving it to die to Psychic. Well then, so much for the special attacking niche. I bring in Snorlax as Surf and Ice Beam KO them, leading to the next battle against a Machamp and Golem, where I take no damage by using Surf to one-shot Golem and do damage to Machamp with Lapras, while then Dragonite uses Fly to avoid Machamp, all while KOing next turn before either of them can take any damage. Fourth is Crobat and Piloswine. Again, Lapras Surf for Piloswine and Dragonite Ice Beam for Crobat, one-shots both on turn 1. Fifth pair is Arcanine and Blissey, so I go with Lapras and Snorlax for Surf and Brick Break respectively, though that doesn't go perfectly smoothly, as Blissey goes for Attract immediately on Snorlax, which immobilizes him for a few turns, but eventually Lapras does manage to deal out 3 Surfs to KO Arcanine before going to below half HP, and Blissey's nailed with 2 Brick Breaks to KO it and let me move on to the next pair. Furret and Ursaring are pretty easy, as Dragonite and Snorlax both 2-shot each respective opponent with Dragon Claw and Brick Break respectively. That made sense, right? I think so anyway. Seventh pair is against Lanturn and Dragonair, and here's where I make a major screw-up. While Dragonite easily outs Dragonair with Dragon Claw, Lanturn easily outs Dragonite with a one-shot Ice Beam. Uh-oh, that's what we call in the industry an oopsie-poopsie in my pants. Thankfully, Earthquake from Snorlax and a follow-up Secret Power from Scyther is more than enough to KO, but that's my biggest heavy hitter eliminated before we even reach the end of the second of 4 towers here. Thankfully, the last pair in Gyarados and Rhydon are easy enough to KO, though not before I realized Rhydon's Lightning Rod makes it so that I should have used Surf first with Lapras, letting them get a free turn with Earthquake before KOing Rhydon with Surf and Brick Break, leaving just Gyarados to fall to a Thunderbolt Body Slam combo to win, clearing the second tower and bringing me up to 5 total losses. All good though, as I can just bring in Raichu and Pidgeot to take their places, though they don't serve exactly the same purposes. I think they're good enough, so I'll work with what I have. I do make a mistake on the first floor of the Knockouts Tower, though, as I lead Scyther against Magby, going for Swords Dance and nearly falling to a Flamethrower, but thankfully Aerial Ace does go for the KO here, and it burns. Great. Anyway, Togepi's done in by Raichu's Thunderbolt and smooch him with its own Perish Song since it has nothing to trap me in with. Floor number 2 has Charizard first, but with Raichu taking it out into Thunderbolts, it's not a problem. Flareon, which goes for nothing because Lapras's Surf is fine. And finally, Poliwrath, which goes down to 2 Thunderbolts from Raichu. Floor number 3, Miltank and Snorlax have a Brick Break off with me winning. Vileplume is outed by swapping into Pidgeot and Flying. And finally, Lapras is taken out by Stab Body Slam from Snorlax. 4th floor has Chansey, and since I made Raichu a mixed attacker, Brick Break is able to do the job just short with 2 of them, with Chansey paralyzing Raichu with Thunder Wave before Quick Attack does it in. Second is a Shiny Seaking, very cool as it hits Mega Horn for over half, but Raichu's Thunderbolt one-shots it, leaving just Vaporeon.
Did you know?
God, Ame, please, I need to remain brand safe. No. You'll get your Vaporeon jokes when the 2-player Nuzlocke video comes out in a few days. Anyway, Lapras KOs it with a few Thunderbolts, and the 5th floor is up next. Easily done thanks to Dugtrio, Earthquaking Nidoran Female, Nidorina, and Nidoqueen. So the 6th floor is right ahead, with Ampharos as the lead, so I may as well just stay in with Dugtrio. Doing the same thing, but taking massive damage from Mega Kick since Earthquake doesn't one-shot. Thankfully, the second does take it out and lead into Grand Bull. Lapras comes in here and one-shots it with Critical Surf, and last up is Misdreavus, so I swap into Snorlax and Shadow Ball it to KO. 7th floor is Goldeen, Quillfish, and Mantine, all of which are handled by Raichu's Thunderbolt, leaving just the 8th and final floor. Starmie's first, handled by Raichu's Thunderbolt and Quick Attack, landing Psychic for a little over half before going down. Arcanine is handled by a single Surf from Lapras after swapping, and Venusaur is handled by 2 Aerial Aces from Scyther after swapping from Raichu, finishing the area without a death. Thank goodness, by the way, the other 2 were a little rough in terms of execution. All that's left is the mixed area, and since you guys get the gist of this whole thing already, I think it's clear that, well, it's either I lose here or I win the challenge, and I do manage to get through the first 6 floors without a single scare, leaving just 2 more. The 7th floor has a double battle against Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, which nearly beats my Pidgeot, but we hang on with just 10 HP remaining to KO on the Crackback, with the final floor consisting of Charizard, Nidoqueen, and Poliwrath. Thankfully, these are well handled by Raichu and Snorlax, with Raichu taking out Charizard, Snorlax taking out the Nidoqueen, and finally Raichu coming back in and KOing that Poliwrath, finishing the Trainer Tower and winning me the run. Now, that was kinda fun, though I do wish the Trainer Tower had a little bit more challenge to it. Sure, it did take out a few of my Pokemon out of a lack of planning since I was underestimating it, but this gave me quite the idea that I haven't seen anybody else tackle before. But that'll take a lot of time and planning, so I don't want to spoil what that is until it's ready. But if you understand what I did in this video and what I'm thinking about, you'll probably be able to put 2 and 2 together, but I don't want to spoil it. Anyway, if you're interested in getting the cards I pulled in this video, make sure to head on over to my Twitter, linked in the description, and follow me over there, as well as reply to the tweet of this video for a chance to get them. But with that said, shoutouts again to the Pokemon Company International for sending me the Elite Trainer Box. Seriously, that's so wild to say, and it makes me very happy to know that they enjoy my stuff enough to send me something to make a video on. And of course, shoutouts to Super Snail for sponsoring today's video. Check them out in the description below or in the pinned comment since it really helps out the channel and is pretty fun. With that said, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.